Time for another edition of the Online Dinner Party, where we bring amazing people together to bring all kinds of great conversations, life lessons learned, and a number of other things in that space. So, definitely looking forward to another great edition here on Pod TV. I'm your host, Mark Lee, and of course, we're looking forward to some amazing conversations later on this evening. I'll have to head over to the Hayti Heritage Center, an African American cultural center that exists here in Durham and does a lot of great things, both in dance, both in poetry, and of course, later on this week, on the weekend, they'll be having that summer arts intensive where the kids get to learn about a number of things as well. So I think it started off as first a summer program, and now it's a year-round program also. So definitely a lot of things are happening in there. As a matter of fact, I think that this weekend they'll be doing another one of those candle concerts. So that is where they bring a lot of those fake concerts out there, and then they salute somebody. I think the last one that they did, which I didn't attend, they were honoring the legend of Old Blue Eyes, that being Frank Sinatra. And the one that I did attend, they had some chamber music, and I want to say that they were doing some of the Legend of Zelda or some of that other kind of uh, children's oriented movies that exist, and all in that kind of way. So they've done a number of those, and I can't remember what this one will be, but I'll definitely be interested to find out. And then on the Saturday this week here in Durham, North Carolina, will be the Phoenix Festival. So that is a festival that I think has been celebrating about 22 years in existence, because if I remember correctly, it started in 2001. And many folks that watch this show know that I'm also involved in event planning, even though that isn't one of my events. I've definitely been involved in a number of other ways, and just enjoying the conversation and seeing what they are all about in that way. But one of the things that used to happen regularly at the Hayti Heritage Center, as a matter of fact, I was there earlier this week and have been there several days this week, is a class around African dance. And definitely when I think of African dance, I think about the proverbs that exist in that space, and a number of other things that exist in that space as well. For many folks that watch this show or know me, they know that one of the legends of African dance was none other than Baba Chuck Davis. And Baba Chuck Davis was the founder of the African American Dance Ensemble, and definitely was very much involved in a lot of his legacy. People are still carrying that legacy on. And like I said, a lot of things in that space are about proverbs, and also about some of the, well, not so much proverbs, but some of the old stories, some of the old kind of sayings that go on in that space and all along those lines. So the first guest I'm going to bring on, and I've got a number of them that I'll be bringing on in this hour and a half, 2 hour roughly conversation and everything, is Chris Morehouse. So like I said, glad that Chris was able to join. And I know that you've had an interest in this whole notion of African proverbs and the stories that you can learn from them, even as a Christian, because I understand that you are a man of faith and all along those lines. But definitely, if you want to share something, because I do know that Baba Chuck used to go regularly to some of the nations of Africa to learn some of the traditional dance that existed. And of course, his legacy still lives. And I know a number of people here that are big fans of African proverbs. So just wondering if you could share a little bit about your journey and some of the things that you learned in that space.
Absolutely. I'd be delighted to. First, thanks very much for this opportunity. I'm delighted to be here. So, yeah, I've had a long-standing interest in Africa. I mean, as a kid, I would reach for the Time Life African Kingdoms volume on my parents' bookshelf. I ordered a set of records, remember LPs, Teach Yourself Swahili, so I can still remember how to greet an elder, Shikamoo Mzee. So I went to grad school and met people from Africa, from Mali, Nigeria, Tanzania, and it just so impressed me. They were students sent by their governments to learn and how to contribute back home, and to learn more about the cultures. I bought these. I started collecting books of African proverbs. And I never threw them out. And about 7 or 8 years ago, some sparks flew, and I thought I got the idea for my new book, Legacy Wisdom of African Traditions of the Bible, just issued last month. And you asked for an example. Here's an example that stayed with me, 30 years or more. The Ovambo people of Namibia, that's northwest of South Africa, have a proverb: eyes see me too. Mm. It's a command to your own eyes to see you. Oh, wow. And that is a lovely companion to, and expresses the same idea as seeing the beam in your own eye rather than obsessing about the mote or the speck in someone else's. So there's an overlooked resonance between African proverbs and Bible verses, Judeo-Christian teachings that I think it's really enlightening to put them together. So the book has about 300 proverbs, 46 different themes. So it's an area that I think is just been overlooked, has been hiding in plain sight for a long time.
It sounds like something that definitely been hiding in plain sight and all along those lines.
Yes.
I want to learn more about that, and I'm going to bring in some of our other guests because, like I said, it's a conversation where we learn about each other, learn about the different things that we're doing. So definitely, I think I'll bring in another person that is in the space of arts as well and everything in that way. So I'm going to actually bring in Mr. Radko, and he's actually a fellow Christian. It's like the Christian.
Hey there.
So
I
can share a little bit about what you got going on, and even some of the things that are happening in that sense of your ornament.
You bet. Yeah. Well, I am a Christmas ornament designer. I actually design glass ornaments for a living. And here's an example of one just to give you an idea of what they look like. My company is called Heartfully Yours, and I import all these blown glass ornaments from Europe, from countries like Germany and Italy and Poland and the Czech Republic. These are countries that have a tradition of glass blowing since the 1800s. And so I work with the children and the grandchildren and the great-great-grandchildren of the glass blowers from like half a century or a century ago. So I'm keeping this holiday tradition alive even now in 2023. It's pretty unbelievable. But I have this great new company, Heartfully Yours, and I'm doing something that comes from my heart.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it's more and all along those lines. I know that we might get some of your other equipment. But one thing I was going to say is that it all possible and everything in that line. I was just wondering if you could share with me some of what you've got going in the sense of even glass blowing. Because I remember as a kid, definitely my parents were involved in a number of things, including creating a community radio station. But I do remember there was a time that they even tried to get into glass blowing. And I can't remember whether it was my dad or my mom, but they definitely did glass blowing. And it's something that I did not pick up as a skill. But I remember just being fascinated looking at the way that was done and everything. So I was wondering, do you do some of the glass blowing yourself? And if so, that's something which would be trained more by folks in the education system.
Well, actually, the art of blown glass Christmas ornaments is very much a European tradition, and the ornaments started getting sold in this country, in the United States, about 120, 130 years ago. But it was never really a tradition in America to blow glass ornaments for the holidays. It was really, people bringing over their traditions from other countries and then following that or repeating that on Christmas trees here. I'm American. I was born in the Bronx. And so I designed these pieces. And I try to cover different holidays as well. Some Halloween, some 4th of July, some spring designs as well, wedding ornaments. What I think is interesting about the glass ornaments themselves is that they're given as gifts year round. If someone gets a new home, or maybe celebrating the birth of a new child, or maybe some newlyweds, start them off with a collection of ornaments. And then, as their family grows, they pass them on to their children and their grandchildren. So as a result, all the ornaments are like memory makers, and each family creates their own traditions around the ornaments that they have.
Yeah, one of the things I'm already seeing is this theme of just international history and enjoying our history. That the other Christians is involved in the African proverbs space all along those lines. That's one thing that is distant in our conversation. I'm going to bring in Lynn out of Palestine also here from Diane Gilman and hear some of the things she's got going on as well. So definitely, like I said, it's a regular dinner party. We invite people in and they share their story and everything. So Diane, if you'll share a little bit about what you've got going on in your world and in your life.
Woo! Okay. What do I have? Like 3 minutes to do this? So I just turned 78 years old. And after 30 years on air, QVC HSN, tele-retailing, as the Jean Queen, when I was 60, I had my light bulb moment. And I invented a jean for middle-aged women. No one had ever done that before. I took all my measurements, made the jean. It absolutely changed my life, my mood, my whole outlook on aging. I took it to my network. No one believed ever that a middle-aged woman would wear a pair of jeans again. $100 million a year company. It just shot straight up like a rocket. So what I learned from that was always believe in yourself. Don't listen to outside noise, blah, blah, blah. Number two, if you really think you've got a great idea, absolutely fight for it. And it's never too late to make a success out of yourself. You know, in fashion, which is so youth obsessed, everybody I knew as a contemporary designer had quit, died, aged out. And here I was left at 60, still designing on television. And it's almost like my career began at 60. So I'm a big advocate of doing something with your later years in life, believing in yourself, and never taking no for an answer. If you truly think you've got something that's going to work, not only did I take it to $100 million a year on my network, HSN QVC, I then went to QVC and begged them to put me on in Europe, because my thought process was hormones are hormones. Estrogen is estrogen. I don't care whether you're eating a plate of pasta or fish and chips. You're going to go into middle age and come out of it differently. You need my genes to connect your youth to your mature years that are coming. So they gave me a chance on QVC UK out of London. I shot to #1. Then I got to Milan, Italy, shot to #1. Dusseldorf, Germany, you know the story. Paris, France, absolutely. Melbourne, Australia, Toronto. And I had to go appear on all of those shows, plus America. So zooming back and forth. In the meantime, just as a kicker in life, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer in Christmas Eve of 2017, went through treatment all of 2018 and into 19, went back on TV, and then COVID hit. TV really changed. And I decided a post-chemo body couldn't do all that traveling. And I thought, well, what else can I do? I can talk. I love communication. I love my audience. I love connecting with my female audience. Maybe I should do a podcast for over 55-year-old women. And that's how, along with the book I wrote during breast cancer called Too Young to Be Old, came about. So my thought pattern too was, if in your head and your heart of hearts, you always remain open and use your heart energy, and you're loving what you're doing in your life, you will always be too young to be old. That's my theory.
No, I love that.
That's
I love
my
that theory,
story.
Diane. I love that theory. And one of the things I was getting to ask the three of you, and like I said, I got some other folks I'm gonna bring it in as well, is I know that sometimes ageism is very real. I know that my mom has had a very illustrious career and is now retired, but I do remember that when she was on the board of a certain bank, it was a local bank or a statewide bank, and everything, that they wanted her to retire and almost kind of like forced retirement because they had that 70-year-old cutoff and everything. And I want to say that mom is still very active and still very smart, even though she is now in her early 80s and all in that space. So I always felt that was something that they did wrong and all in that space, because I think that sometimes we discount people for age. And like you said, the fashion industry can be very youth oriented. And I know that folks, even in my early 60s, we've got to have some stylish clothes sometimes, even though I'm just wearing jeans today. So not being overly stylish and everything, but it's important to have that style aspect. And I think that we sometimes cater too much toward the youth community. But I'd love to hear your thoughts around that, Diane, and all three of your thoughts around this notion of ageism and not giving enough due respect to our elders.
Well, two things about ageism. First of all, luckily, I was in two industries that were all about ageism, which is entertainment, television, where the audience wants you to stay young forever. They don't forgive you if you age, and fashion. But I started with an older audience. A tele-retail audience is average 50 to 55. So that was a good thing. When I came out of breast cancer, I had choices. Did I want to dye my hair again? And I thought, I don't want any more chemicals near me after chemo. But also, if I am going to do something else, it was already on my mind, shouldn't I be authentic? And why not take advantage of what I have that's my tea, my truth, in the moment? So I decided, and it was a bold move, to let my hair be natural and go white. And I think that was a good move on my part. And I think if you're going to talk about ageism and how to get around it and how to cope with it and how to stop it, you need to be in your own moment. As to the jeans are an iconic item. They're not even fashion. They're such an endemic part of our lives, especially as women. And, I was used to, as I sold on air, I always said, think back. What is this jean going to mean to you? Was it first date with your husband? You were wearing a pair of jeans. Was it first family vacation after you had your first child, your second child? In your jeans? Was it that night out with the girls where everyone said, ooh, you've really lost that baby fat? In jeans. And I realized that almost every happy moment of my life I could trace back to a jean I was wearing, also because I dressed rock and roll stars in the 60s and the 70s, like Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. So I was always around jeans, and I was around jeans when they were cutting edge and daring to wear. And then I was around jeans when they became almost like the American flag, like you had to have a pair of jeans. But when we got older as women, nobody made a jean for us. You couldn't fit into any of them. You felt so left out, and that is ageism. And so, although I did not revolutionize the fashion industry, I hit on something that meant a lot to me personally. I mean, I couldn't find a jean that fit. I was a widow. I gained a ton of weight in my widowhood. And when I couldn't find a jean that fit, and I was really tired of wearing old ladies like Mama Bubba, big clothes to hide me, I just went out and bought 3 yards of denim, had a sewing factory in New York City at the time, took my measurements, made that pair of jeans, saw how people treated me. They treated me not only like I was younger, but they treated me like I was hipper, more intelligent, more energetic, more worthwhile to hang out with. And I thought, you know what? If one item of clothing could do all of that for me, what could it do for millions of women?
Okay, that makes sense and everything. Hey, Chris Morehouse, just really quickly, I know one of the things that I was just thinking about as Dan was talking, I'm here to bring in Jim North and all along those lines, is the notion of the importance of even respecting our elders, because I do know that that is part of the culture of many of the African nations and all along those lines. So I didn't know if you had a proverb that spoke to that as well, because I do know that a lot of the stories and a lot of the things that goes on in the African proverbs are centered around respect, particularly respect for the elderly.
Certainly. I've got a Yoruba proverb about respect our elders. So, and you can certainly find counterparts across all different cultures. And there's respect the elders; they are our fathers. That's the Yoruba proverb. But there are counterparts in many cultures, and reverence for ancestors is also a really important feature common to a lot of African cultures.
Yep, definitely agree with you on that and everything. Really quickly going to get to Jim. One of the things that we hear in Durham, North Carolina, there is a fashion person that was very well respected and all. He actually went to school at Hillside and also at North Carolina Central University and passed away not that long ago. Like I said, Baba Chuck passed away a few years ago. But I was wondering, Diane, if you ever had any chance or pleasure to do any work with Andre Leon Talley, because Andre Leon Talley was actually from this area and all in
You're
that.
kidding. You know, he was such a towering figure. And he was attached to Anna Wintour, the chief editor of Vogue forever, to the hip. For me, because I was in tele-retail, and it's a long story how I got there, but through a lawsuit and couldn't use my name for years and blah, blah, blah. I met him on occasion. And, you know, he was so powerful that he almost blew you back when you met him. And yet, in his own way, a gentle giant. And I think there was no place for either older people like me or African Americans in the world he lived in, which was Parisian couture and the hallowed halls of Vogue magazine, where it was judgmentalism was so the norm that honestly, if you were going to apply to work at Vogue and you were a size 12, you were not going to get the job. If you were a size 10, you were not going to get the job. You had to be a perfect 0. You had to be blonde. So that man, Andre Talley, he forged the way for diversity. Mm-hmm. And that diversity included me, somebody much older than any kind of norm for designing anything meaningful. Because in that industry where I was, it was all about being a money maker. You know, if you made money and you shone green, you were respected. And I think that he shone green by how many stars he made. He was a star maker. He was a discoverer. He saw talent where nobody else did. And he was one of a kind. And I think I say that very sadly, because I don't think, although he set a path, he so broke the mold. He was so unique that that's not the kind of person. Maybe you can replace that person with another shining star once in a generation, once in 100 years. And I was so sorry to see him pass on. I felt, wow, way too soon.
Yeah, definitely courageous and definitely a powerful trailblazer and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Jim, if you would share a little bit about your background. And like I said, got just a few more people that I'll be bringing in. Like I said, that's the nature of the online dinner party. We just have a casual conversation and learn from each other and all along those lines. So Jim, if you'll just share a little bit about what you got going on, and we'll continue the conversation. And then after that, I'll probably bring in probably bring in Tara and then bring in Damien as well. And they got a couple of others also. But definitely, Jim, share a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, first of all, that's her story, and I'm sticking to it. That's really, really good stuff there.
Thank you.
I really agree with her about, staying young at heart. I have this thing I say to myself for every year, every birthday I have, I'm 1 year younger at heart that year. Once in a while, somebody calls me old. I don't know what they're talking about. I usually turn around and see, who are you talking to? I don't feel old, but some people say I am. But I just wrote a book and published it in July called Unsung Heroes Wear No Capes. The subtitle is 12 Essential Virtues for an Extraordinary Life. I believe we all want to live an extraordinary life. And so the book is comprised of a lot of unsung hero stories and kind of the character virtues that personify really what is an unsung hero, and we should probably aspire to be that more, is my thought. And so what is a hero? A hero is just a helper, and when you have that kind of predisposition to be a helper, to be an influence, to be a positive force for good in someone's life, you kind of rip off your own superpowers that kind of they lie under the radar sometimes. They're like horses or bulls wanting to get out of the gate. There are things inside of us that they just need some supercharge, some energy. And how does that happen? Well, it's because of your determination to be a benefit, a blessing for other people. Really, I think we can raise our eyesight and our vision for what it means to have an extraordinary life. It's really by how can I apply my talent or my skills and benefit someone else? It's really, I want a bigger vision.
Yeah, I agree with you and everything. Going to bring Tara in as well, but as I bring in Tara in, who are some of those unsung heroes? Because I know oftentimes when we're looking at social media, I know I pay attention to Clubhouse, Facebook, and a number of other things. Of course, this network airs on Roku. It also airs on LinkedIn and a number of other sources. And I'm oftentimes fascinated by people that are doing things that we don't always hear about or get recognition. I sometimes get even frustrated, and I have a background in journalism, with the fact that some of our unsung heroes are doing work. Like here in North Carolina, we have a whole Research Triangle Park, and I can guarantee you that there are scientists and engineers that are making inventions on a regular basis. But do you see enough coverage of them? I would argue that you don't, and all in that space. So just wondering, who are some of the unsung heroes that you had the pleasure of talking to?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, Jim, and then I'm going to learn more about Tara. But
all right. Well, you're talking about African American dance, and so I'll just build on that. There's an Oklahoma senator, Kevin Matthews. Have you heard of him?
I've heard the name. Yes.
Okay. Have you heard the Black Wall Street story?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's one of the stories in my book, and Senator Kevin Matthews helped me tell it, because Black Wall Street was in Greenwood, Oklahoma. Greenwood was a thriving, prosperous African American district in 1921 on the north side of Tulsa. And there was such a segregation, after the Civil War, after emancipation, after Reconstruction. I think we all know that it's an unfortunate thing that the racial issues persisted. And so Greenwood was such a prosperous area that Booker T. Washington, passing through, called it Black Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
It was incredible. And just the business, the thriving, of these people was remarkable. And so Senator Kevin Matthews grew up in Greenwood. And so he well knows the story. Everyone in Greenwood knows. Unfortunately, a lot of people in America did not know what happened in 1921. And that is that an African American named Dick Rowland, this story is in my book, Dick Rowland was a shoe shiner in the downtown Drexel building. He boarded an elevator with a white girl named Sarah Page, and for some reason that no one knows, the elevator door opened and he ran, and she's screaming. Later, she said that, Dick Rowland had grabbed her elbow, but he was accused of rape. Now, anyone that knows this kind of history knows how often this kind of accusation too often occurred. And
yeah,
so
thinking about like even Emmett Till, and the fact that the woman that made that accusation recently said that it wasn't the case and everything. So then that's some recent history that has been out there along those lines. And by the way, Jim, just to let you know that, like I said, I'm in Durham, North Carolina, and there are several Black Wall Streets. Durham is actually one of the other Black Wall Streets that exist as well, just like Seneca, Rosewood, and a number of others. So there is even some conversation as to which one was the first and who started where. But there were a number of independent, very developed areas that were having a thriving African American business community. And like you said, Tulsa was one. Durham, North Carolina was another. Unfortunately, here in Durham, the highway system came through and other things came through. There was the destruction of that. I think Tulsa was a fire and some other things that destroyed it, but definitely here it was a matter of the gentrification and some of the things that took place with our highway system, and that there might only be a few businesses, including the Coastal Arts Center that I work at, that are left of that particular legacy and all along those lines. So it is a legacy that I think needs to be taught about and taught on a regular basis, whether it's Tulsa, whether it's Greenwood, whether it's a number of other places that exist. So I do agree with you on that. That is something we've got to learn more about in that space. Just really quickly, and I definitely want to get to the final two guests, and I've got one on the stage. But Tara, if you can share a little bit about your background as well, so we can learn a little bit about you and continue this online dinner party for about another hour or so. But I love bringing in folks of different backgrounds and us just learning about each other and society in general. So Tara, share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I want to double down a little bit on what Diane and Jim said about living an extraordinary life, an extraordinary life, and really living out your dreams, no matter what age you are, where you come from, your economic background, anything like that. So when I was younger, I had a shirt that said, "Remember me, I'm going to be a star." And I wore that shirt everywhere, so much that it actually disintegrated. I really wish I still had it today. But the problem is in my very young, undeveloped mind, I always thought that being a star was being a rock star. So singing, dancing, performing, I can play this guitar behind me, like maybe 3 songs. Sometimes it sounds like a dying animal when I play, so I'm not very good. And so I thought, well, I have no musical background. I guess I'm not going to make anything out of my life. I'm just going to throw away this dream and just be like a just normal human. But for some reason, I held on to 0.001% of that dream. And I tell this story a lot, and people always ask me why. And I really, really wish I knew why. I have no idea. Something inside me told me to not throw away the whole thing. And I walked around with it, all the time, kind of in the back of my head. Some days, weeks, months, years would go by where I would forget about it until I came to those pivotal kind of cross moments in life where I had to make decisions. And I thought, oh yeah, I wanted to be a rock star. Well, I still can't sing and I still can't dance, but that was interesting. And instead of being a rock star up on stage, I actually got to, and still do, support some of the world's most famous musicians and actors and business owners out there. So some of the world's most successful people, I've been able to run their lives and really get to know and understand how they have become a success and maintained their success. And because I was so fascinated in why they were a success or a rock star and I wasn't, I was like a sponge to all these little things that they did on a day-to-day basis, again, to make them this huge success. So now I run.
Go ahead.
So now I run a couple of businesses. I started my first business in 2007, but I really had this dream of wanting to help as many people as I possibly can. And I'll tell one other little story. So when I was out on the road, one of the crazy requests that I got from this rock star all the time was that he wanted his toothbrush to be sanitized in a hotel dishwasher every time it traveled. So every time the toothbrush came out of the suitcase, I had to go down to the kitchen and ask the staff if I could put this toothbrush in their dishwasher. And a lot of times the staff would know we were coming, so they were fine with it. They knew this crazy request was happening, but sometimes we were staying at hotels where we'd never been before. And there was this one time we were in Shanghai and I was trying to communicate. I only speak English, so they didn't understand what I was saying. And they were looking at me like I had 3 heads. Like, why does this woman want to put this toothbrush? Like, what is happening? It was probably one of the most awkward moments of my life. And I remember standing there with toothbrush in hand thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. And I really knew that, again, I really wanted to help people. I loved helping people. I loved helping them become those rock stars and maintain their success. So I came off the road with just this dream, no idea of what I was going to do or how I was going to do it, but really wanting to help more than one crazy rock star at a time.
That sounds like a great thing. And actually, even Diane mentioned some of her work with the entertainment industry and all along those lines. And actually on Monday, on the other show that I do here on the network, and it's the Monday show that I do every Monday afternoon at 2:00, I had Bobby Del Rio. And we were actually talking about how a lot of times we don't give enough dues, and even with this writers and actors strike that has been going on and everything, to those that are behind the scenes and all along those lines. So I'd love to hear from both of you around that, because I think that sometimes we are so busy wanting to be like you did, Tara, wanted to be the superstar or be the athlete if you're in the athletic realm and all in that space. But I know that I've even got with your cousin's kids or your second cousin. So I've got a second cousin that is actually a trainer, and she's actually a trainer at one of our universities and all in that space. But that is some great work that I think gets overlooked oftentimes as well. So I was wondering if y'all could both speak to the need to bring other jobs into that space, because I think a lot of times we were going for that star mentality and all along those lines. So Diane or Tara, if you want to jump in, and I'm gonna bring in Damien as well. I think that's the final guest and everything, and we'll learn more about him as well.
I'll tell a really fast story. So for me, I didn't deal with it the way Tara did. And I think she was up closer to the rock stars for me. And I'm sure I'm considerably older than Tara. So the music industry in the mid-60s was very different. And you had complete access to huge, just about to be stars. So, okay, how did I begin? Get out of the house the only way I could. My parents forced me to join a sorority at UCLA, UGG. And one night I had a boyfriend who was a record agent, and he called me up and said, "Hey, can you sneak out and come up to the Sunset Strip and we'll meet at the Whiskey A Go-Go?" And I said, "Don't be stupid. It's Monday night. It's dark at the Whiskey." And he said, "Not tonight." So, okay, I put on my very best. And even in college, because my parents did not want me to work or be a fashion designer, but I hand painted with oil paints. I jeweled with glue. I slit. I patched. I would make these masterpiece denim jackets. So I'm wearing a masterpiece jacket. I slide out of the sorority house. I somehow get myself up to the Strip. We go into the Whiskey. There's maybe 20 people inside a club that held 1,000 easily. We're standing right by a little elevated stage, maybe 6 inches elevated. Out comes a woman with flaming red hair and a bottle of Southern Comfort, and opens up her mouth, and the sound comes out, and it's a wall of sound, and it's Janis Joplin, and it's her first audition for getting a recording deal. And by the way, my boyfriend totally blew it, didn't get her at all. Thought, whoa, she's weird. But afterwards, she's talking to him. He was with RCA. And she's like, "Hey, man, I really dig your jacket." And I said, "Okay, take it." "I'd love it if you'd take it." And that's how I got into dressing rock and roll stars. There were no veils. There was no security. It was all very up close and personal. And then my best friend, who I opened a little boutique with shortly, who was her boyfriend? Oh, nobody. Just Jim Morrison from The Doors when The Doors were starting. So for me, being always in the periphery of the music/celebrity industry was through my talent. That was my calling card. That's what I put up there. And I hovered around that whole thing of celebrity for most of my life, but always through my talent, never managing anybody, but and very interesting, because when you get into tele-retailing, you honestly wind up seeing many more celebrities, but they're all sort of on the way down, and they're just so sure they're going to make a fortune on tele-retailing. So my other story would be, I remember when I was 9 years old and I was watching Frankie Avalon on TV, a famous, beach blanket bingo movies with Annette Funicello, the Disney mice people. And he was singing Venus, and I was like, oh my God, he's so dreamy. My dream in life would be meeting Frankie Avalon. I was 9. When I was 49 and I'd been on tele-retail for a couple of years, who did I meet? I met Frankie Avalon, and he was selling arthritis cream, because by
Wow.
now he was like 59. So you know what? Beware of what you wish for. You may get it. You may just not get it in the form that you really wanted it. But, okay, those are my celebrities.
No, I appreciate everything. Definitely, Damon, if you can share a little bit about your story as well and everything.
Okay, I'm Damon Grayson, of course. Born and raised in Compton. I also come from the music industry, and the entertainment industry and the clothing industry as well. I started off being a DJ. That led me to do production, music production. And from music production, I went to being a manager and a road manager as well. I had a clothing company for 8 years. I had a retail store here in Compton. I had one in Japan as well. And now I'm promoting my book, When His Words Meet Yours, When His Ways Meet Yours. So
Definitely
now I'm
along
here.
those same lines, if you could, because I know that part of the Compton journey, because like I said, the place that I work at, the HR Heritage Center, is actually celebrating, as there are many cultural places around the country, the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And we know that hip hop definitely has some strong roots in both the fashion industry, because definitely fashion is one of those elements. It may always be called fashion, but it's definitely one of the 5 elements that exist in everything. And definitely California and New York were at the forefront of the growth of hip hop. Some people would argue California started, some people would argue New York started. That's a battle and a discussion I won't get into on this particular show and all along those lines. But love to hear your thoughts around hip hop and its 50th anniversary. So I'll start with you, Damon.
Okay, well, my mother had me when she was young. So we had when hip hop basically first started, we had the records that came, and everybody knows, the hip hop, hibbit to the hibbits. I learned that at 9 years old, I think. But I'm extremely happy that it lasted this far. When we were kids rapping and stuff and first starting, everybody kept saying, it's just a fad. It's just a fad. It's just a fad. It's just a fad. Now it's 50 years old. So I'm proud of it. I'm glad where it's come from. It's grown so much, and it's just getting started.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hey, Tara, just along those same lines, I'm going to tease you and all in that space, but I know that you have definitely been involved in a number of kinds of music. You mentioned rock, you mentioned definitely, I'm thinking even some hip hop and everything else. And I remember way back in the Ice Ages, yes, I'll even age myself and everything, when I was going to school in the 80s at Marquette, same school that Doc Rivers went to. And all along those lines, I remember stumbling into a couple of parties, house parties, and one of those house parties actually involved people literally running into each other. And I'm going like slam dancing, don't quite get it, don't quite understand it, but it was just kind of a totally new experience. And you are a young teenager and seeing folks do that whole running into each other and everything. So I just wanted your thoughts around that, because like I said, it definitely took me, it caught me off guard as a young, naive teenager back in those days.
Yeah, for me, I kind of skipped out on all of the like house parties and stuff. I went straight from high school dropout to basically running around backstage with all of these bands. And I kind of learned my whole music like icons and lessons and history, all from being backstage. So I actually supported the Rolling Stones. I was Mick Jagger's personal assistant for about 8 years out on the road, his touring assistant. And obviously tons of blues influence from the Stones. And I was young. I was in my early 20s and I was like, what's blues? I don't know what, like, I don't want to listen to this. And then, you know, you have Keith Richards who's like, sit down and listen to this song. And then all of a sudden it's, you know, my favorite song in the world. So all my kind of influence from the music that I even listen to today is all because of these amazing people that I got to be around and introduce me to the music. My father actually was a radio DJ, but for classical and jazz music. And again, when I was growing up, I kind of was like, ew, classical, what's that? Jazz? I don't know. Isn't that for, you know, old people? But then when you have, again, like Mick Jagger or Keith Richards being like, listen to this jazz song, then you kind of think, oh, well, it's not just my dad telling me this. It's pretty cool. So I have to say, sometimes a Rolling Stone song will come on the radio and I never want to hear one of those again. So I'm very quick at turning it off. But so like Start Me Up, nope, then I will turn that song off in a heartbeat. But some of the music and songs that they would play, just even jam to backstage. I have no idea who the original people were that recorded them or even what it was called, like the title of the songs. But I know that like, oh, I really love that style of music or this style of music. Today, I always tell a good story about, you know, like how famous people, again, become famous. And in my head, I always think of another artist that I support today, and that's Drake. And I always think, well, is Drake actually really that talented? Don't tell him I said that. Hopefully he's not listening. But like, is he, or is he just a really, really good business person? Because sometimes I feel like the talent is not necessarily in the musician now, and it's more about like the marketing and you know, how many promos you can get behind you and brands behind you and things like that. So I know I've opened up a whole other can of worms
No,
there.
that's okay. We like opening up cans of worms, even doing a dinner party and all along those lines. But one thing I was going to ask Damon is along those same lines, because I do think that a lot of times we have conversations, and I know that even if you look on some of these social media sites, you will see a number of people that are claiming to be influencers. I sometimes hate that word because I've even been given that term myself and everything, but I sometimes wonder if it is more about the branding and the marketing, to Tara's point, than the actual talent. And you worked in the industry, so just wondering your thoughts around that and whether you are finding the talent to be as good as it used to be.
It's definitely not as good as it used to be. And like you said, it's about marketing. And talking about Drake, he was already a star before he became a rapper singer. So he already had his following. And then when he got with Lil Wayne, that just blew him up even bigger. So it's not really about the talent anymore. It's what the people like.
Yeah, it's definitely about what the people like and how they like it and all along those lines. Tara, just to let you know, as many of y'all got the email from me, I've actually been involved in the blues space for a while, and all along those lines, definitely involved with a blues festival here in Durham that is now on its hiatus, and hopefully will come back at some point or another. But I've also been involved as a DJ in that space, and there is a legend in that space that I know that Keith Richards is a fan of, because he's actually retiring this year. I think he said that this is his final year, and he's in his early 80s, to kind of Diane's point. But if you've not seen or you've not gone to a Buddy Guy concert, and you get a chance to go to a Buddy Guy concert, definitely go to a Buddy Guy concert, because like I said, he's still amazing and will even go out all over the stage, all over the audience. And I'm convinced that he found the fountain of youth, and I'm just hoping that he'll send us a copy of it as well, because he's got more energy than some 20-year-olds that I know as well. So I don't know if you've had that experience of working with him at all, Tara, or if you've had the experience of dealing with him.
I've never worked with him, but he has been to many a Rolling Stones concert. So I've had the opportunity to meet him. I've been to many of his shows. They were kind of smaller private shows. and an amazing human overall. A lot of people, a lot of celebrities will put on an act for the media, but he is definitely not one of them. Definitely a big fan.
No, definitely same here as well. And that actually brings something I was going to bring up to all of you and everything. But even because many of you have had experiences with various celebrities, but do you think that we sometimes put them in too much of a higher, like put them on a totem pole and try to give them a higher standard? Because a lot of times when I have met them, and I've met folks like Petrie Bird, the bailiff from Judge Judy, and even Antonio Fargas, who played Huggy Bear, and even Ruby and Ozzy when they were living, and I found them to, for the most part, to be down to earth. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a couple of them that are not as down to earth and have a little bit of that conceited attitude, but for the most part, I found them to be down to earth and to be very aware of their audience and also wanting to have some dealings with their audience. But I was just wondering y'all's own experience, because many of y'all here on this stage today have had greater experiences than I have. So I was just wondering how you have dealt with those folks and if you found them to be, for the most part, more modest than people think that they are.
I'll
I can
jump in.
start.
Okay, go ahead.
Go on.
ahead.
So most of the rock stars that I've had the privilege of meeting and supporting have all been wonderful people. They all have their quirks though, and such as my toothbrush story. People always ask like, why? And I don't know why. I learned not to ask a rock star why a long time ago. They do some crazy stuff that I just don't want to be a part of. But yeah, they all have their quirks. They all have. Mick Jagger used to get me to paint his hotel rooms a very specific shade of beige everywhere we went. We were in Mumbai in a very fancy hotel that had ancient gold leaf wallpaper on the wall, and we took that wallpaper down and we painted the walls beige. So, and he would get very cranky if it wasn't beige, if the room smelt like paint. So they all have their moments, they all have their quirks, but in like the older celebrities, I feel like it's just because that's all they know. Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones have been famous for 95 years. So, they don't remember not being famous. Not that it's an excuse, but it's just all they know and kind of what society has created in them. Same with Drake. Drake's been, famous for a very long time, and his ego is massive. But I think his celebrity status can like stand behind the massive ego. Then we have some like influencers who maybe are famous for half a minute that have this real attitude about them that I don't think is worthy. And, I feel like you need to earn your attitude and your ego.
No, I definitely agree with you. Were you going to add something to it as well, Damien?
Yeah. All the celebrities that I have met, come in contact with, or know personally, every last one of them humble. No, their family people. I mean, and I actually met the bailiff from Judge Judy. I had an office in North Hollywood, and his wife came to buy something from me, and I kept telling him, I said, I know you from somewhere. He was like, a lot of people say that, and I said, no, I never forget a face. He was like, oh, okay. He said, you ever watch Judge Judy? I'm like, yeah. And I was like, oh, it's him. But even in that experience, and like including like say Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, Snoop, Coolio, I know all of them or knew them, and they were all humble. But I don't believe that people should put them on a pedestal.
Right. I agree with you on that.
I remember I was working with Joe Jackson, and me being around these people, they're just regular people. But when I left, I hopped on the 405 freeway and I got starstruck in the car on the way home. And I was like, that was Joe Jackson. That's, Michael Jackson's dad. So, I mean, if anybody be on a pedestal, it would be Michael Jackson. But I was looking at it. This is the man who made Michael Jackson. That's the only time I was starstruck, and it wasn't in front of him. So my ego wouldn't let me do that. But I don't think they should be on a pedestal. But all the ones that I've known are very humble.
No, I definitely agree with you on that and everything. I will say that Petrie though is one of the best parties that I've ever seen, because like I said, he'll either get a room. I think one of the times it was at a spa. Sometimes it also might have been in hotel spaces, but that is what he was known for at the National Black Theater Festival, which is now every even year, which means the next one will be not this year, but the following year. Because I want to say it started in far back as maybe 99 or something like that. So it's been around for a number of years in Winston-Salem. And I know for several decades now, he and some other folks that are in that acting space were the ones that are going to throw the party. And he will sometimes even track me down to make sure that I know what the party is and that I'll be best parties around to that modesty element that you were talking about, because he wants to make sure that folks are having a good time, but not getting involved in any of the craziness that can go on in Hollywood as well. So it's a very modest but fun party, and all in that kind of way. So definitely it's one that I would suggest people, if you get to go to the one next year, you can find out where it's at. It is kind of quiet, but not overly quiet. Hopefully you can make it to it and all along those lines. I just wanted everybody's thoughts, because I know that sometimes even in that ego line, and we have a world politics show, that I sometimes wonder if some of the folks that become celebrities don't think that they can do a little bit of everything. Because we know that Jesse Ventura, who used to be a wrestler, thought he could be governor. And then of course we had another person that became president and is trying to become president again. And there are other celebrities that have been in that lane as well. So I was wondering, do you think that sometimes the ego gets in their way also? So I was wondering if y'all have had any deals with that, because there are some folks that are out there that started off in entertainment. We can even go back to Reagan. Reagan was a actor. Some people would say a B actor before he became president, and all along those lines. But I just wondered how much of that notion of getting good in one field and then thinking that you can become great in other fields as well, do you think is an important aspect of that mindset, that entrepreneurial mindset? Because I have seen a number of folks that have, like I said, started off in one field and then gone on to something else. And those were examples from the political landscape. And we can even go into the left side of politics. It wasn't AOC a waitress before she became the major person that she is now, and all along those lines. So y'all's thoughts around people having the skill set to develop in multiple fields, and does that ego help some?
Well, many, as I said, you aren't on the ascendant part of your life. If you're a celebrity and you're coming to tele-retailing, you're sort of on the downtrend and you're trying to make it softer, and you're thinking, well, people always tell me I look good, so I should be a fashion designer. And I've been through so many of them, but and they were all where they would come to me because I was the #1 fashion moneymaker on HSN and design a line for and work with. So one of the most challenging was Priscilla Presley. And obviously she had divorced Elvis, and she was looking for other things to do, and she needed a revenue stream. She came to HSN. So here I am, and I'm obsessed with denim. And I know how to stud it, and I know how to jewel it. And so I study all of Elvis's costumes, and I'm prepared to meet Priscilla. And I think this is going to be a huge hit. We'll just interpret all of that embellishment on jeans and jean jackets. We'll put it on air. Customers will go insane because it's a touch, just a little touch of Elvis. And this happened again and again with other celebrities. And Priscilla said, no, I wear Armani suits. Let's do Armani suits. And I'm fingernails under the table, gouging out the under part of the table. So what I found is when a lot of celebrities lose their foothold, it isn't so much about ego as it is about not understanding their persona anymore. Not understand. Yeah, I see you saying yes. Not understanding what made them who they are, or how to, in some way, keep that going. And I could tell loads of stories like that, and I met them all. And I remember once, my only other story I'm going to share is Wendy Williams came on air, and she came to my dressing room one day and she said, I need you to do something for me. And I said, what? And she said, I think you're lying. I don't think that's your hair. It couldn't be your hair. You're wearing extensions. I want you to bend over and I want to examine your scalp. I mean, seriously. So I think celebrities, you know, they were treated like queens and kings at Tele-Retail, because Tele-Retail was just sure, even if their audience was diminished, they were going to bring their audience with them, which was not necessarily so. So there were those of us who were the hard workers. We were the worker bees. And I think that we had a natural resentment to that kind of kid glove treatment. But I mean, stories like being accused of lying about the amount of hair follicles I had on my head was just one of many. So yeah, that was my life for 30 years.
Sounds like it and everything. And Mr. Redco and everything, I was just wondering, did you ever get a chance to send any of the ornaments that you have designed to any of the folks that are in that celebrity lane, whether it's here or in Europe?
Well, yeah, actually, a lot of celebrities have collected my ornaments over the years. I just want to just quickly add, I'm so impressed by Diane, because this idea of ageism is still present in our society for all of us. I'm almost 65, and you know, I'm starting a brand new career all over again. So I expect to work for 20 or 30 years more. Maybe I'm lucky because Christmas comes back each year, so there's a little renewal to it. But yeah, the celebrities I've worked with have always been wonderful in person. Whoopi Goldberg, I decorated her tree for many Christmases. Robert De Niro, Barbara Streisand asked me to do Hanukkah ornaments. Elton John actually paid retail for my ornaments at Neiman Marcus. So it's funny the way Christmas connects us across the board, wherever we grew up in. It's not necessarily has to be a religious event, but it's a connecting event where you get together with your family and friends and celebrate and maybe slow down and just, you know, enjoy some of the good vibes of people you care about. It's true in this society that celebrities do garner a lot of PR. So if if you're a fashion designer and you have Beyonce wearing one of your dresses, or one of the Kardashians wearing one of your dresses, certainly you're gonna, you know, get a bump or an uplift. And it was also fascinating hearing about Diane's experience at QVC, or Home Shopping Network. I used to be on QVC as well. Sold literally millions of dollars of ornaments on QVC, and I got to see the celebrities that came on as well, like Joan Rivers. At the time, she had her jewelry line. Yeah, she absolutely loved her very much. Marie Osmond, she had a doll collection. So
Marie was on HSN for a while. I loved her.
So I find that a lot of the celebrities that come on those shows are very nice. It's nice to see them in the green room and just hang out and realize that they're human too. And I think ultimately we all are human. We get hyped up and sometimes lose touch with reality. But I think there's a lot of people with heart out there, and I love all the celebrities who put their fame to good use, whether it's supporting a good cause, a children's cause, or a disease, finding a cure for a disease. The celebrities they're sort of treated like the experts. And so I admire any celebrity that gets behind good causes, whatever that means something to their heart. And then they kind of use their fame in a good way, in a very productive way, because it's not just about making money, but it's about making a difference in the world.
No, and a lot of us everybody from everybody else. I know that sometimes they get slack whether they're sports or whether they're from the art, or they're from other forms of celebrity status and everything. Sometimes they will be willing to speak about issues. Celebrities about Black Lives Matter, about rights, about LGBTQIA. I don't have any problem with that. I think that people are take offense. I was wondering y'all, because I think if you have the platform, you should use it. But I'll start with you. Thoughts.
I actually couldn't really hear you that well. There was a bit of a feedback, so I'm not
There's a
quite sure
real
what the
echo.
question
It
was.
was an
Yeah.
I think I got to put mute on Diane just for a second. Can you hear me a little bit better there now and
I
everything?
can. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one of the things I was curious about is what is your thoughts when, because sometimes celebrities catch flack when they are having to stance, kind of what Mr. Roscoe was talking about and everything. So I was just wondering, are you a supporter of those artists that use their celebrity status to make stances, whether it's around Black Lives Matter, LGBTQI rights, or a number of other things that exist? Because I do know that there have been celebrities that have gotten some pushback when they have taken stances. And like I said, I went to school with Doc Rivers, so I know that Doc Rivers was one that was very adamant around some issues as well before he got into the broadcast booths, because he's going to go into broadcast booths after having coached the 76ers there for a while.
Yeah, I am definitely all behind them putting their celebrity status and their money towards a good cause, if that is the reason why they want to do it. A lot of celebrities want to do it to help their image or as somewhere to hide some of their money for a tax savings, or, you know, to get a connection with some other brand. And I hate to be like Debbie Downer over here, but a lot of celebrities do that. And I know that, it's not really a charity or a cause, but I know everyone right now is talking about Taylor Swift and the NFL, and people are like, is this just a magic branding moment? Or is it real? Is it a real love story? So unfortunately, Hollywood does have a lot of those, whether it's sports or music or wherever, a lot of those stories where it's not real. But the ones that actually have heart and are doing it for a real reason, I am 100% behind them, no matter what their cause. I feel like anybody, famous, not famous, should be able to use their voice and voice their own opinions towards any matter, if it's with heart and for a good reason.
Well, I definitely agree with you. And one of those things about heart, and like I said, I don't know Taylor Swift personally. I've never met the woman and everything, but I was admiring the fact that she definitely realized that she is making millions, if not billions of dollars, and was willing to pay it forward and give some of that money to her staff as well. So that definitely something that I wish more folks would do in this space, because I definitely was admiring that. And like I said, I don't know the logistics of it. I have not had the pleasure of meeting said woman yet and everything, but from what I'm hearing from the grapevine and from the streets and everything, it does seem like it was very legitimate, and that she was paying Grips and other folks that are in the industry on the lower side of the hierarchy some significant raises and everything. So I don't know if either you or Damon, or even unmute Diane, because I think there was some background noise that was going on. If y'all had any thoughts around that or had any experiences with that.
I believe anybody should use their platform if it's for good. Like Tara was saying, as long as their intentions are pure. But even if their intentions are not pure, they're still helping. Whether they're doing it for the wrong reasons or the right reasons, it's still helping the people that it's set out to help. So I agree with it 100%. It's good to use their platform for good.
No, I can definitely agree with that and everything along those lines. Just really quickly, and we got about another 25, 30 minutes to go and everything, but I was just wondering, in this space, a lot of times, all of you are entrepreneurs and very successful entrepreneurs. So what lessons would you give to fellow entrepreneurs, not just those in the celebrity space, but just to entrepreneurs in general? Because I'm thinking, and I'll start with you, Jim, and everything, that there are a number of unsung heroes in that entrepreneurial space. I'll just give an example. My grandmother, who passed away many years ago in the early 80s, was actually the creator of the first African-American library in Raleigh, North Carolina, because there was no African-American library. And she decided to start that with her library degree and her background in education and a number of other things. So she literally knocked on doors in order to raise the money in order to create that library that still exists to this day. And I want to say that library was created maybe like in the 50s or the 60s or something in that space. So it's been around for some time, but she literally started it because she saw a need, just like my parents saw a need for a radio station, a jazz and blues radio station, and didn't see that in our community. So they created it on their own. So those are two examples of unsung heroes that are in my own family line and all of that kind of space. But how important do you think it is for us to encourage our entrepreneurs? And do you think we're doing enough of a good job of that? Jim, you're on mute. You're on mute. Oh, maybe I got to unmute you. Hold on. That might be on my side.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the issue that applies no matter who we are, no matter what status we find ourselves in life. No one ever gets to where they are alone. And I think that is maybe the warning sign here is pump the brakes if you've gotten massive success in some area, maybe great wealth or great fame. That's the time to pump the brakes because you didn't do that alone. And therefore, it would be a mistake. This is where sometimes we get off, whether you're a celebrity or an entrepreneur, a business leader, a boss, use that. I think I'm of the same mind as all of you. This is what I'm hearing from all of you. You really don't want to leverage that in the wrong way. You want to be a connected person, and you want to leverage what you do for good. Now, in my book, I interviewed a lady that worked with Fred Rogers for almost 60 years. He was able to keep that level head. He was so steady. I mean, when you think of a steady person, that's Fred Rogers. And he achieved a lot of fame, but it never did really go to his head. He acknowledged that he couldn't do what he did without so many good people around him. And I just think it's true. No matter whether you're an entrepreneur, who are we going to help with that? How are we going to channel that success? How do you raise the level if you've achieved that much success? What's next? Okay, well, who are you going to help with that?
Yeah.
Are you going to stay connected and grounded? Because either you're helping someone or you've been helped. With that, really, any excuse for pride or arrogance goes out the window. Because you didn't get there alone, and you're not going to keep going alone either. Mm-hmm. We all need each other, I mean, so it's the mystery of the universe. We're connected to each other. And it's not only that we're connected to each other, we're responsible toward each other and accountable. So I just think it's good for us to stay humble. Yeah. Fred Rogers is a great example of that. You all have met some incredible people, it sounds like. And I've interviewed incredible people, not only in my book, but otherwise. I'm always amazed and blown away by the stories I hear, and even your stories. They're amazing, the influence that you've had in your lives. And so I look at it this way. Every story you hear and understand, it multiplies your life. We should be better for what we learn from one another, but keep it in check and never let it go up here to where I'm so amazing. The people should just fall at my feet and stuff. That's just the ditch, that we have to avoid. I'll pass this on here in a second. There's two ditches. One is thinking more highly of ourselves than we ought to think, and the other is thinking less highly of ourselves than we ought to think. And so I think it's finding the sweet spot and realizing that if we maintain that sweet spot, our lives are going to make a big difference for people each day. I'm going to leave it with this. Find one moment each day that we can transform and say, I'm going to do something amazing today. And maybe it's in the area of encouraging someone, or maybe it's in the area of being honest or hopeful, or maybe a friendship. There's a point each day that we can take and raise the level of our life. So I liken it to, the superheroes, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man. Superman was Clark Kent. It was when he went in the phone booth that's when the transformation occurred. And for us, it's the same. When he came out of the phone booth, he was ready to do amazing things for people. It's that he got the heart and the mind right. I'm going to go help someone else in distress, and that ripped the lid off his superpowers.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and I'm glad you brought it up because actually I think Tara kind of alluded to it earlier as well. Because I think sometimes we get too caught up in this notion of the imposter syndrome and also kind of those inner voices and that outer voice and all along those lines. Because I know I've been guilty of that. There have been jobs that I have not gone for. I'll say it. I'm in my early 60s and still in that single lane. So I know that there have been young ladies that I have also bypassed and all in that kind of way because I was too busy having a conversation with myself in order to not do it and all along those lines. So I just wondering how the six of you have dealt with that, because I do know that sometimes that is a conversation that also goes on where we are afraid to have that conversation with the inner critic and also the outer critic. To your point, Jim, a lot of times our family and our friends aren't always as supportive, and sometimes there are folks that will hijack our dreams as well, because I know that there have been times that I have had friends pull me into their dream and it may not necessarily be my own dream. And I think Tara kind of alluded to that as well and everything. But I was just wondering y'all's thoughts around that and how y'all deal with those inner and outer critics and everything. So I guess I'll start with you, Tara. How have you dealt with that? And I want to hear from Damien as well. But I know that there have been times that there have probably been folks that have told you that you weren't going to be successful, that you shouldn't have done this and you shouldn't have done that, and you had to get your own fortitude. So how have you dealt with that?
One of my favorite quotes of all time is, if anyone ever tells you your dreams are silly, remember there's a millionaire walking around who invented the pool noodle. And it's true. Like, if someone told me that I was going to get this foam thing and put it in the water and make millions of dollars, people would probably tell me that I was crazy. But that person went off and did it. And, you know, people told me all the time that I was crazy for thinking that I could leave Toronto, where I was born and raised, and go to Hollywood and run around after rock stars supporting them, and actually think that it was a career and not just a 2 years of, you know, wild partying. And I'm sure Diane has had the same thing when people when people said, what are you doing at 60 making jeans? But I really think that the difference between a successful, I know the difference between a successful person and a non-successful person is the successful person actually holds that vision and keeps doing the things they need to do, whatever it is, whether they're hard, they're boring, they don't feel like it that day. They just keep moving forward a little bit and a little bit, and they don't let go of their vision. And it's actually really interesting that 99% of the population is okay with being mediocre. So anyone who wants to be successful, you just have to be better than a little bit better than 1% of the population. And by doing just like one hard thing or one kind thing or anything that you can do to drive your own dreams forward on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't matter what anyone else is telling you. It's what, you know, is true to your own heart.
Yep. What about yourself, Damien? What's your thoughts around that? Because I know that there have probably been times you came from Compton, and I know that area. I don't know it personally, but I know people from Compton, so I know it's not exactly the nicest area and all along those lines. But there have been some successful people, including some people that are surprised it came from Compton, because I know that one of the major conservative voices in the African American community, if I remember correctly, also came out of Compton, that being Larry Elder and all along those lines. But I was just wondering your thoughts about how you have conquered some of these hardships, because Compton is definitely a difficult area, just like I know some people that came out of Cabrini Greens and other quote unquote projects. I hate that term, but that's what they call them sometimes.
Yeah. I used to have a problem with overthinking a lot of times, but I wouldn't have been successful if that's all I did. And I also had another problem with trying to pull people up with me that didn't want to come up or just wanted to use me for where I was going. I had several record deals in front of me, and I turned them all down because of what was written in the paperwork. Mm-hmm. I didn't just want to be famous. I wanted to be rich. So the problem is, I think with a lot of people, they want to be famous rather than rich. And especially back then, artists wasn't getting paid hardly anything. You know, you have these big videos and the cars and the girls and this lavish lifestyle. When the cameras goes off, everything goes back to where it belongs. It doesn't go home with you, you know. But I think you just do you, and stay true to yourself. A lot of people have told me that even to this day, going through the situations that I've been going through, I moved to I was in Florida for 5 months, and I moved to Puerto Rico for 6 months on a spiritual cleansing. So I dropped everything. I had no income. I was living off of my savings, and of course that's disappearing. So everybody that I was talking to kept saying, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. And I'm tired of doing things that I don't want to do. If it doesn't make me happy, I'm not going to do it, no matter how much money is involved. It's about happiness, and you have to be happy with yourself first and foremost. That's just what I believe.
That makes a lot of sense and everything. Hey, Chris Morehouse, what is your thoughts around this? Because definitely I'm thinking there might even be some African proverbs to deal with this as well. But how much have you had to stop listening to folks? I'm sure folks even in your church community have told you, no, you don't need to write a book about no African proverbs. They're not even in the Bible or a number of other things, but you have shown the relationship that exists and everything in that space. So just wondering, have you dealt with those negative Nellies, for lack of a better term?
It was all internal. There was no one from my church questioned it. They've all been terrific. You know, there was a moment when I was like, because I looked around and there was nothing quite like the book I just published. So I saw a need. I saw a niche I could fulfill. But I did stop for a minute. Should I be the one doing this? But going along with what Jim said, no one gets it by yourself. You know, I enlisted about 30 African collaborators, and I asked them, is this really a proverb? If it wasn't, I took it out. What's the context? Is it used with children, for example? And for some of them, are there translation issues that don't quite make it into English that would enrich our understanding? And overwhelmingly, the response was so positive. And I shared with each of them not just the proverbs from their culture, but the verses I intended to compare it to. And across the board, each one is so enthusiastic about the book I was about to publish. And they kept asking me, is it out yet? Is it out yet? But their contributions have really, really enriched my understanding and have really made a strong contribution to the book. So I'm glad I did it. And in the process of selecting them, you know, some of them said, I mean, they had access to special resources. Several had access to a national library. At least one had access to a royal family. And another said, I can reach rural women and ask them because they know the traditional wisdom. So, you know, I was like, I was just so grateful. It was such a rich experience at the end. So, you know, it's out there, and people can think what they want, but I'm really proud of the result.
Sounds great.
It's actually, can I just interrupt with a stat for a second? It's actually really interesting what you said, Chris, about it all being internal thoughts.
Yes.
Because actually most of us think that the reason why we're stuck or distracted throughout the day or can't get ahead, we usually blame external. So I'm distracted because of social media, or I have an unhealthy relationship, or if I work in an office, there's always that chatty coworker or whatever it is. We always blame external, but it's actually only 10% of what makes us stop doing what we're wanting to do and succeed at our goals. The other 90% is actually our internal distractions and triggers. So I'm not good enough. Is this the right goal? This is boring. Maybe I should try it later. Maybe I'm too old. Maybe I'm too young, whatever it is. And I always find that fascinating that it's actually 90% internal that we have to push past and not the external triggers.
But I would say not entirely push past, be guided by, listen to, right? And sort of anticipate what the criticisms might be and how you can address them. That was really, really helpful.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Good points.
Yeah, Mr. Radko, what is your thoughts around that? And if there have been times that you were kind of having with your own as well.
Yeah, well, you don't plan as a child to grow up and become Mr. Christmas. It's just not in the cards. Everyone wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or a fireman or a chef. My parents happened to be doctors, and they thought I was absolutely insane. They had sent me to college and everything. It's like, you want to make Christmas ornaments now? You know, we didn't pay for your tuition in college just to go make Christmas ornaments. So yeah, and there was no one doing it at that time. Back in the 80s, everything was plastic or styrofoam. They had kind of forgotten about the blown glass ornaments. So I had to forge my way all the way. I just didn't believe in limitations. I think that's really a key. It's like, no matter what people say, oh no, you'll never do it, or why are you doing it? Just, you know, shut that out and just kind of, you know, every time there's a limitation, it's just a temporary roadblock you can get around or under or above it, but there's always a way to keep moving forward. You know, having that idea of the goal, that mountaintop that you're trying to reach, and just, you know, you don't really know how you're going to get there yet, but you know, you see that top of the mountain, and you know, one way or another, if one doesn't work, you'll pivot and you'll go another way, but you're going to that mountaintop. And you forge your own way. It's about having faith in yourself. It's also in believing that we do have a purpose. We have an opportunity to make a difference in our lives, and we don't know how that will play out. But I mean, Diane did it herself by you know, branding blue jeans that honor women over 60. How cool is that? You know, I mean, we all have our own ways of making a difference in the world. And if you just believe that you have a purpose and there's a reason why we're on earth and something that we get to fulfill, and we have our own way of doing that. And so don't listen to other people's stories. Oh, come over here and do it the way I want you to do it. No, you gotta like be true to yourself, follow your heart. And I always felt that was my inner compass, you know, my heart, and also that I love what I do. I think that's a secret too. If you don't love what you do, then it's a hard road to hoe. But if you're passionate, if you believe in what you're doing, that even if it is hard, you're going to find a way to make it work, and it'll be contagious. People will see, wow, you know, he really loves it. I guess I'll love it too. And I think that's something that can apply to everyone. It's not something we learned in school. You know, the idea of loving what you do. Pick something that you're passionate about doing and following your heart. You know, you don't learn that in Harvard Business School, or maybe they're starting to teach that now. It's by the books. It's, you know, computer reports and whatever. But it's there's more to life than just numbers and measurements. It's about making a difference and how you invest your heart into the work that you do.
Yeah, no doubt about that. But that has been a very fascinating conversation. I will have all of you back in the near future and everything. But one of the things I get everybody to do at the end of the show, and I'm going to go round robin in this space, is, like I said, Pod TV is a global network, and I am one, as y'all can tell, that is about trying to spread positivity and hope to this lovely world that we live in, and all along those lines. So definitely, if you can tell folks how you can be reached, if there's any message that you haven't gotten on this particular hour and a half, or hour and 35-minute show that you want to share, definitely do that, and everything along those lines. And like I said, for everybody, and I'll start with you, Mr. Morehouse, and everything, if you can spread a message of peace and positivity, or positivity and hope to this global community, that is something I try to get every guest to do. And I'll definitely start on this show with you. So definitely, I hope that everybody will hope to know that they will probably be getting an invitation to another dinner party, because I do love having guests come back and having these kind of conversations.
Okay, I'll offer this. It is better to build bridges than walls. Swahili proverb.
Appreciate that. And that's a great one that is very powerful and even very pertinent these days as well, because we know there are some folks that are trying to build walls and do some of the kind of division things that are going on in our community as well. Mr. Radko, if you have any.
Yeah, I would say that we all count. We're all important. You don't have to be a billionaire, you know, and you know, create 500 hospitals or whatever. There's something that each of us is meant to do, and each of us counts. We're all equal in that way. We're all kind of like this human family, and we do support each other, and have faith that there's something you can do in this life that will make a difference. And again, it doesn't have to be, you know, driving a Maserati. It doesn't have to have, you know, all the latest clothes from Bergdorf's. It's, you know, it's not necessarily material connected. It's about expressing your spirit. And we all have a spirit, and we can invest our work, the way we treat each other, in a warm-hearted way by bringing our spirit to life in whatever we do.
No doubt about that. Before I get down to Diane and everything for the two Chris's, if you can tell how you can be reached and also how you can be communicated in terms of your websites and things along those lines. So that's what I forgot to give Chris Morehouse and Mr. Rocco as well. If you can do that.
Chris, want to go first?
You're on mute.
Reach me at Christopher Morehouse, CHRISPHERMOREH@gmail.com.
And me, I can be reached through my company, Heartfully Yours. So it's just heartfullyyours.com.
Sounds great and everything. Diane, if you can share a little bit about how you can be reached and any message of positivity and hope that you would like to share with our audience as well.
So my parting message would be most of us walk around in our lives thinking that protecting our heart and keeping it away from people is the safest thing you can do. That's how you're not going to get hurt. But in fact, opening up your heart is the entire point. And that was the lesson I learned also through breast cancer when I became, for the first time in my life, vulnerable. And it totally revolutionized and changed my life. I had to lead with my heart energy. So I think what I would say is what most of us think is the safest thing is actually the most dangerous thing you can do, which is don't keep your heart and your heart energy away from people. Spread it, and you will not believe the rewards and the love and the warmth you'll get back. And for me, you can find me on YouTube with my own channel and Instagram and TikTok and Facebook with thedianegilman.com. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, everything. Jim, if you'll tell folks your message of positivity and hope and how you can be reached as well. You're on mute.
All right. If I could just real quick before I do that, Christopher, have you ever sold ornaments to the Christmas store in Frankenmuth?
Yes.
That's a massive store. It's the biggest one in the world, right?
Certainly one of them, yes. Bronner's, yeah.
Okay, cool. Anyway, I've been fascinated by all of you. This has been wound up being kind of a mastermind. I mean, really such good information here. I'm really appreciative. But my website is jimbnorth.com. No dot, just Jim B. North altogether. And what I say for encouragement for people, your life counts far more. The impact of your life is far more than we imagine. I think there's things that go under the radar that even we ourselves don't appreciate as much as we could or should. It's like, wow, that really made a difference. Wow, that really mattered. Absolutely. And when you get to the end of your life, you want to see the accumulation of that over time becomes a tapestry, so that's what I would say. I think people should be encouraged that their life is one of inspiration, and don't underestimate yourself and the power and influence you can have upon other people.
Greatly appreciate that and everything. Tara, I'll turn it over to you and then also to Damon, but Tara first. And then if you'll tell folks how you can be reached and any messages of inspiration that you'd like to have as well.
Yeah, so my message would be that success isn't just for the few, and the rich celebrities aren't the only ones that can achieve their dreams. Anyone can do it. It just starts with today and doing just a little thing at a time. I always like to say, just do the thing. That's all that's standing in anyone's way. And your dreams don't have to be to solve cancer, to cure cancer, anything like that. It could be to be the best mom in the neighborhood or in the school. It could be to be the best volunteer in your church group or whatever it is. So anyone can be a success and anyone can achieve their own dreams. I can be found. My company is called Take It Easy, so takeiteasygroup.com. And I'm also on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, I guess it's called X, LinkedIn, all of those places as well.
Appreciate it, Tara, and everything. Damon, to close this all out and everything, a message of positivity and hope and how you can be reached, and definitely any closing thoughts that you have. And like I said, we'll end with one of my friends' kind of PSA announcements, and all along those lines, I think I'll end with the one around educators and education, since I know that that's very important to many of us and all in that space. But definitely, as we wrap up, if you'll go with your closing thoughts.
Okay, well, I can be reached on all platforms with Damon Grayson or Damon Modrise Grayson. My middle name is Modrise. You can also go to my website, mywordsofwisdom.com, and find the book and or more items. And what I'll leave you with is always stay true to yourself.
No doubt about that and everything. Well, y'all have been amazing guests. I think Chris or Jim in the chats and in the conversation was calling it a mastermind, and that's kind of what I think of the dinner party as being, is us just getting together, learning from each other, and also the audience learning as well. And I can tell you that during the course of the week, this will air several times, because that's the way Pod TV works and all along those lines. So I definitely appreciated all 6 of you being here with me, and hope that you'll be making return trips into the not too distant future. You heard me alluding earlier to that Cultural Arts Center, so I'm getting ready to have to dash out of here after the Cultural Arts Center, but I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I hope that all of you will make a return trip in the not too distant future.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you, for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
I won't fold.